Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier 6 British heavy cruiser HMS Devonshire. Devonshire has been gifted to us a little bit to play on the live server. This is a little different than the process they used to use, the process I used to turn out these first look videos under. But after putting a few games into it, I realized, I probably should take the time to do one of these, so I'm going to get these done before we lose access to these ships so you guys can have a look at the ship, we can look at the armor scheme, talk through the vital statistics, and just get a sense of where she fits into the rest of the Tier 6 cruiser hierarchy. So, as we always do, let's start with HP. Here we go. Starting off, basically 34,500 hit points. This is very nearly tied for best in tier amongst tech tree heavy cruisers, amongst tech tree cruisers in general, just 100 points behind Tier 6 Italian cruiser Trento. Of course, Admiral Graf Spee, premium German cruiser Admiral Graf Spee, has far more HP, but she's an outlier in this tier in so many ways. So I'm not really comparing this ship to her. I'm trying to compare her to the other Tier 6 tech tree cruisers, certainly the other Tier 6 heavy cruisers. Torpedo protection, 16%. Again, also best in tier for tech tree cruisers in general at this tier. Graf Spee's is better, but as we noted, she's kind of an outlier, so I don't really kind of consider her. Armor-wise, of all of the Tier 6 heavy cruisers, Devonshire has the best citadel protection. Now, that's not saying a whole hell of a lot, right? It's only 114 millimeters here. The same belt armor that you basically find on Tier 7 British light cruiser HMS Fiji. But it's far better than the citadel protection you tend to find on the other heavy cruisers at this tier. Now, the only other heavy cruisers you're going to find at Tier 6, especially in the tech tree, if we don't compare the premiums, basically you're talking about Pensacola, Aoba, and Trento. Those are the three ships that I'm really comparing Devonshire to, because you can't really compare her to a light cruiser. You got to compare her to the other heavy cruisers that are her contemporaries, right? And so that's where we're at. Now, Pensacola does have a stretch of her belt armor up forward where her bow is angled that's thicker than the 76 millimeter armor she has over her citadel, but it's still less than this 114 millimeter belt that Devonshire has. Her extremities remain 16 millimeters, and the turret armor is still only 25 millimeters of armor on these turrets doesn't feel very awesome, right? So she's, as you would expect for a mid-tier cruiser, she's not all that well armored. But for what she does have, that belt armor is pretty solid. So if you take the time to put in some angle, again, when you're fighting another heavy cruiser, when you're fighting a battleship, you might find that armor does more work than you think. Defensively, as far as anti-aircraft goes, Devonshire is the best of an otherwise mediocre lot, by which I mean most Tier 6 cruisers don't really have a lot going for them in the AA department. But Devonshire has the most raw anti-aircraft power of any Tier 6 cruiser, premium or otherwise. Her long-range AAR is pretty good, extending out here to 5.8 kilometers, 95 DPS there. Her mid-range AA power is really, really good, except for the fact that it's shorter range. You see there only 2.5 kilometers. Most mid-range auras in this tier go out to 3.5 kilometers. So that's kind of a knockdown for it, but it does have a lot of good power to it. And then her short-range aura is very, very good for the tier. So she's not a soft target for enemy planes by any stretch of the imagination. Offensively, start looking at her main battery here. Similar to Trento, Devonshire packs 4 turrets of twin-barreled 203 millimeter action. These are pretty good guns, kids. The HE shells hit decently hard and have a pretty solid fire chance. While the AP shells will do work against enemy heavy cruisers, when called to do so, right? When any cruiser goes broadside or gives you a decent angle, you can get really good work out of the AP. Now, her overall DPM is also competitive with that of Aoba and Pensacola. You see there, reload time shown in the port UI is 12 seconds. This is a lie. Currently, her reload in-game is clocked at 14 seconds. When you run those numbers into the spreadsheet, her DPM is honestly right in the middle of the pack, right where it should be when you compare it to Aoba and Pensacola. It's hard to compare it to Trento because of how SAP works, right? You can't really make a direct comparison to Trento, but suffice to say, in terms of her main battery, Devonshire is very, very comparable to the other heavy cruisers in her tier that she's going to be compared to and she's going to be up against. What makes her a real challenge to play? Look a little farther down that list. Look at her base firing range, 14 kilometers. That is bloody awful. She barely outranges her light cruiser cousin in the tech tree, HMS Leander, which clocks in at 13.2 kilometers range. And every other heavy cruiser in this tier outranges her easily. Most of the light cruisers at Tier 6 outrange Devonshire. I'm talking about Dallas, I'm talking about Bugioni, I'm talking about La Galicianaire and de Grasse, Nuremberg, Makarov. So many light cruisers even outrange this thing. Her main battery range is her primary handicap, and it's a challenging one to play around. Trust me when I tell you this, okay? Her torpedo armament is identical to that you find on Leander, her cousin in the tech tree. A quadruple launcher on each side of the ship, throwing 8-kilometer torpedoes, 61 knots of speed with that 1.3 detection. These are pretty good torpedoes if you get the chance to use them. What further compounds that horrible, horrible main battery range is her thoroughly, thoroughly terrible and well below average maximum speed. For a mid-tier cruiser, 31 knots is just awful. There are times that playing Devonshire feels a little bit like playing an American standard battleship, right? It takes you forever to get anywhere, but you have to keep moving forward because your main battery range is so bad that you can't hit anyone if you ever pause or slow down or turn or whatever. Her handling is a bit on the sluggish side. The turning circle feels a tad large. The rudder response is a little on the slow side. She's not like strictly bad handling per se, but this is not a ship you're going to be just, sveltely dodging torpedoes. She doesn't handle as well as the British light cruisers. Let's just put it that way. Luckily, her detection does help make up for some of these other deficiencies. When you fully rig this ship for stealth, Devonshire clocks in at an even 10 kilometers detection radius, so she's much harder to spot than any other heavy cruiser at Tier 6. That's a good thing, because she's going to need all the help she can get to get into range, to get her guns into action. Consumable-wise, she packs standard heel. This is not the fancy British super heel. You don't get that until Tier 8 with HMS Bedford. But she has a heel, right? This is really, really good, just like Leander. So, used wisely, these absolutely keep you in the game longer than most other same-tier cruisers. The only other cruiser with a heel at Tier 6, only other tech tree cruiser with a heel is HMS Leander, of course, her cousin, the British light cruiser. The only premium Tier 6 cruiser that comes with a heel is, as we talked about earlier, Admiral Graf Spee, which is kind of an outlier off by itself in terms of how the other Tier 6 cruisers stack up. So heels on a Tier 6 cruiser are obviously very, very uncommon. And getting good results out of Devonshire is going to depend, partly on how you use this heel, knowing when to use it, knowing when to disengage, back off, maybe, use her stealth a little bit, heal up for a bit, and then get back into the fight. The Hydro is British destroyer Hydro, long duration, short range, really, really good for self-defense, but hunting destroyers down with this stuff is going to be a challenge. Anyway, guys, there you go. That's a quick overview of Tier 6's HMS Devonshire. I've got at least one game on the channel where you see me play this ship. I'll throw a link down below or put a card in here or something so you can check that out if you want to see some actual gameplay. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed that. Be safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.